I went to Barnes and Noble and I was just like looking in the self-help section, and the book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, like just somehow stood out to me. And I picked that book up and I read that book, and it changed my life in the sense that it made me realize that I have power over myself and my life.
Absolutely.
And that I actually can control my thoughts, or I can change my thoughts and my beliefs. And before that point in my life, I had a very different outlook. I just thought some people got to be lucky and I was not the lucky one. Like I didn't get the lucky stick.
Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology. So channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 28 of I Think I Can podcast. Today, I interview Kristina Rizzo, and she is going to describe, her experience with separation and divorce, and how, in looking back, it seemed extremely painful at the time, but now she is flying in terms of, where she is in life, her career, and she wants to give you all some encouragement if you do find yourself in that time in your life where you may be contemplating separation and divorce. And it's perfect timing, actually, because I'm holding a masterclass this upcoming week on the topic of should I stay or should I go? Because separation and divorce are known to be one of life's top 3 stressors. But it doesn't necessarily need to continue that way. The pain, as Kristina describes, can be temporary. Not all divorces need to be nasty and divisive. Changing your perspective on past experience can very much change how you will lead your future life. And with that, enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone. Today, I have with me a woman. Her name is Kristina Rizzo, and she, as she describes herself, which I love, is a thought leader and disruptor, shattering the stigma around what it means to be a single woman. She shows other women in society that being single is fun, sexy, and freeing. Kristina grew so tired of the narrative that women need a partner, so she decided to change that. Welcome, Kristina.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, so let's just start off. I mean, I'm sure everyone wants to hear, how you came about this mindset of being single, and being single is sexy, fun, and something it doesn't sound like you really need to change anytime soon. So tell us your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in high school, I was 16, I met my ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, and even in my 20s, I'm sure maybe a lot of you guys can relate. I really didn't feel very confident in myself and who I am. And so then I thought, I don't know why, I just really believe that it's this conditioning and this patterning that we have in society. But I just really thought like, I'll be complete in my life when I'm a wife and I'm a mother. Like that's what's going to give me my meaning and purpose in life. And, it doesn't matter if the partner is the right one for me. Like he seems great and he loves me, I think, but I don't think I'm going to go with him. Right. So this was young Kristina's very different mindset.
Can I just ask Kristina, like you said you were 16 when you met him in high school. And so was he like, how many relationships did you have before him?
Maybe like one.
Right.
And it was only for like a month or something. I don't know. Like, nothing serious before him, actually. No, none.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. I just wanted to, throw that out there.
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, and the way that I was raised, I really had this belief in myself back then that I didn't really matter. And so this man comes into, well, he was a boy at the time, right? Comes into my life, and we're together, and I just feel like, okay, this means I'm loved now, right? Like this guy, he's in a relationship with me. It must mean that I'm loved, because I had really no sense of self-worth or self-esteem back then. And so I put all of my happiness onto him. So fast forward a few years, we end up getting married at 19. So we got married at 19. We had our son when we were 23. And by the time we were 25, we were separating. And the reason why is because obviously the foundation of our relationship was like very shaky to begin with. The reasons behind getting into the relationship were very shaky. And we didn't have good role models either of what a healthy relationship looked like. So we didn't even know how to navigate having a healthy marriage, like had no idea. And when we were together, he was in the National Guard, or the Air National Guard, and he deployed to Iraq. So this was back in, the early 2000s. And while he was in Iraq, he actually ended up having an affair with another woman. And I found out about it through the wives of the guys who were over there. Like they told the wives told me, and my ex denied it at the time. So it was really an awful situation for myself, like to go through. I felt just like completely devastated. I felt like my life was over. Like clearly, if this man doesn't love me, like nobody else is going to love me. There's nobody else out there for me. Like I just was devastated and so destroyed internally. This vision that I had for myself back then was that, I got married and then I'm a mother. So like, that's the rest of my life. Like I'm going to be a wife and a mother now forever and ever. Like that was the only vision I had in my head that time. And so when that crumbled, I was just like, I don't even know now. Like, now what? Like, I don't even know. Like, I couldn't wrap my brain around it. It was so awful at the time.
And I just want to kind of highlight something you said there too. It's interesting the perspective you took immediately, like after kind of finding out that he, betrayed you, is that you were thinking, what's wrong with me? I'm not worthy of his love. What's wrong with me? Rather than, kind of, hey, how dare you do this to me? Like I deserve a lot more than this. I deserve respect. It's sort of, like when you think of it, like it all, you focused on what's wrong with me rather than what's wrong with him. Why would he do that to someone that deserves a lot more than that? And like,
and definitely like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. Like, I think it's what you mentioned before, like it speaks towards, what foundation you came into the relationship with, that you both came from maybe having, parental like relationships that weren't the best. Is that sort of what you were sort of referring to? Is that
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm. Like we didn't have good role models in terms of like what a healthy
Mm-hmm.
relationship or partnership looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we didn't have good examples of just how to navigate life
Yeah.
either
You're so
as an
young.
individual, and it's not that I'm blaming my parents or his parents, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it was passed down to them, right? Like they didn't have
Mm-hmm.
those examples either. Like they were doing the
Right.
best that they could with what they knew.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
a cycle that gets repeated and passed down a lot,
Yeah.
which is partly why I'm so passionate about what I do.
Exactly. Okay. So then what happens then? Like, so now you have a young child, a boy. Is that what you
Mhm.
said? Yeah. Okay. So what happens after that? Because that's got to be hard. You're so young. You weren't working, I'm guessing.
So I was a nanny.
Okay.
I was a nanny before we split up. I went to college and got a bachelor's degree in psychology. Not the best degree to find a great paying job after
Mm.
college unless you get a master's. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up becoming a nanny, which worked out beautifully because the family I worked for was amazing. And
Mm.
I got to bring my son with me to work once I had
Mm-hmm.
him. So it worked out in the end, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
lessons learned about what degree to pursue.
Right.
But first generation going to college, right? So
Yeah.
um, anyway, so when we split up, my nanny job had come to an end, and I actually was working on my master's degree at that time so that I could become a teacher. But I
Hmm.
didn't have a job. I was on unemployment, and I was taking some classes that I needed so I could get my licensure, my provisional licensure to become a teacher. So during that time, I was working on my master's degree, on unemployment, going through the separation. It was
Oh.
like the hardest year of my life was that year when we had split up, and I started. So while I started teaching full time, working, having my son who was like 2.5 at the time, going through that separation. Yes, being a brand new teacher,
Mm.
with working on my master's degree. And actually during this time as well, my father got arrested and put into jail. So then there was also that happened
Oh
all in the
man.
same year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then, and can I just ask, I mean, because this, of course, when one separates or gets a divorce, I mean, there's custody issues. There's like, how did that all like? How did the separation divorce go for you? Was it pretty streamlined or was it yucky?
It was like, I think whenever relationships like that end, especially because, and this is again why I'm so passionate about what I do, putting out a different perspective that you can end relationships in a way that honors each other. Like you don't
Mm,
have to hate each other, right? Like
absolutely.
it didn't work out. At one point, you did love the person. So,
Hmm.
but we definitely didn't have that knowledge or experience, or like definitely didn't have the life experience or anything back then. So it was tumultuous in the sense that we did not get along. I was very hurt and angry with him, and then I think he felt guilty and he took that and internalized that into like just hating on me, like just being mean to me. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
instead of like owning up to himself, it was like, let me deflect onto you. And then I wasn't like the nicest person. So then I would just trigger him back. And that wasn't a fun time.
No.
But even back then, I had set the intention that I was going to do everything in my power to not make my son feel like he's put in the middle of a situation. So I did everything that I could, that when I was around him and Luke was around, that like we were co-parenting, it was so hard back then, of course, like it was so hard back then. But today we're actually really great friends. So like it worked in the long run, but
Good.
the tensions were high back then. We had an easy divorce. I mean, as easy as a divorce can go, in the sense that in the state of Virginia, you have to be separated for a year if you have kids before you can even file for the divorce. So during that time, we had created a separation, like agreement where it's like who gets what and all that. We worked out all those details. Yes, there was back and forth. Yes, there was some arguing, but ultimately, I think neither one of us wanted to spend a ton of money on a divorce. Like, you know what I mean? Like the fighting leads to higher lawyer costs, which is ridiculous, right?
Yes.
And most people aren't fighting over the stuff, really. Ultimately, it's about something deeper because stuff is stuff. You can get more stuff.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And so for me, I was like, I just want to be free. I want my freedom. I'm not down for fighting. Like, you know, and like, so we were able to navigate that. Of course, like I said, it wasn't like super smooth, but we did that. So we didn't have a contentious divorce. By the time we were separated for a year and we could file that paperwork, it was literally just the two of us signing things. And then that was that.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. And then in terms of like navigating our child, we just agreed on every other weekend for him. I wanted him to take Luke during the week, but at the time he wasn't open to doing that because Luke was really young. So I didn't want him like necessarily spending the night away from me. Like, remember, he had been deployed and stuff like that for a while. So he didn't have the same level of relationship with Luke that I did, just given everything with the military. But I wanted him to see Luke as much as he wanted to, but he lived in a different city, like 30, 40 minutes away. So back then we just kind of agreed that he would do the 2 weekends a month thing. And, every other holiday, like we had all of that stuff put into writing. It was pretty rigid back then. Like we don't follow anything now, but like now we just do whatever. We just do whatever. Like we just navigate. But back then we did have like a firm agreement that we put into place that was in writing. That was part of our separation agreement.
Right. Okay. So you didn't really have to go through a lot of, you know, I guess hardship that some mothers would have to do in terms of, you know, giving up their child half time, right? That's a really horrible, scary thing for anybody in your situation to come to that realization. I think, you know, that's one of the most difficult things that a young mother could be faced with in some ways. But I mean, you had your own set of, you know, the whole betrayal, and I'm almost like gobsmacked, right? Like, I mean, just to find out about something like that has its own level of difficulties. So
yeah, I mean, he had moved back in with his mother, so I don't even know how he would have been taking our kid 50% of the time.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He moved out, so he moved back in with his mother for a period of time, you know, before he went and got his own place. But I mean, I don't know. Parenting isn't easy. And if you're not used to parenting, it would be really hard to go from not parenting really at all because you're not there to then having somebody % of the time who's two.
Right.
So,
yeah. So what ultimately, like Luke, how old is he now?
16.
So how is it right now for you guys?
Like we're great. Like we have a great relationship. I love my ex-husband. Like he is one of my dearest friends in my life. I very much value him. I will tell him when I'm having difficulties and he will listen to me. He's actually like one of my biggest cheerleaders in terms of like when I have a dream or a goal of a thing that I want to achieve, he is always supportive of it. And he never squashes my dream or makes me feel bad. Like, why are you trying to do that? It hasn't worked out. Maybe you just need to quit. Like he never would do any of those things. So we have a great relationship. I mean, we share, a lot of the times, like holidays and stuff we'll do together. Luke's birthday, we've always done together since Luke was little. We've always done one birthday party. It's usually like me planning it, him, and he pays for it.
Okay.
But like we've worked that out. But but yeah, so like we just really navigated things over time. But I just very firmly, because I reflect back now, and because I feel so proud of us. And I think like, what was it, and I just think like, I remember that the most important thing to me was that Luke would grow up feeling loved, feeling happy, feeling healthy, and never feeling like he had to choose one parent over the other. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying is like, it's not about me. It's not about me and what I need. It's about what Luke needs right now and what's the most important thing for Luke.
Yeah.
And that's consistent. Yeah. Like childcare, like you're saying, I mean, it doesn't make any sense for him to be spending time like with his dad when his dad's not there. Well, I'm not going to have his dad's mom raising him. But like, yeah, like, I mean, it could be, I think, so much easier for so many other couples if they just kept that in the forefront. What's the best thing for my child right now? And to come together in that way. So great. I mean, good on. And so can I just ask though, do you remember when you were able to let go of, the hurt like that, your ex bestowed upon you by did he apologize? Were you able to like give him a form of forgiveness? Like, when did that happen?
Yeah, I can't remember the year when it happened anymore, because it was a while ago, but I can give you like an overview of what went down.
Sure.
So of course, like I said at first, definitely harbored a lot of hurt and pain and anger and sadness and all of that towards him. Like, I just felt so devastated, but I also knew that like I had to keep going. I just knew, and I had other difficult, painful experiences before in my life, and I never let those get me down. You know what I mean? Like, I've always chosen to keep going in my life, no matter what I'm faced with. And so there's just a point where I was like, I'm not going to let this situation get the best of me. Do I know how to heal or what to heal or what to do? Not really. But I just knew that I wasn't going to let that be the case. And one of the pivotal experiences I had in my life was when I think he was still in Iraq even, actually. I wandered into the bookstore, to Barnes and Noble, and I was just feeling really sad, because I think it was during when he was still deployed. And I was just like still being told conflicting information, right? Like, I'm not doing this, but everybody's telling me he is doing this. And then him telling me, well, I don't know if I want to stay married, like all of that stuff. And that often happens before you finally separate, like where everything's up in the air. You feel like you're stuck in purgatory and you're just like so confused and sad. And I went to Barnes and Noble, and I was just like looking in the self-help section, and the book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, like just somehow stood out to me. And I picked that book up and I read that book, and it changed my life in the sense that it made me realize that I have power over myself and my life.
Absolutely.
And that I actually can control my thoughts, or I can change my thoughts and my beliefs. And before that point in my life, I had a very different outlook. I just thought some people got to be lucky, and I was not the lucky one. Like, I didn't get the lucky stick. And so, or the happy stick, right? Like, I just thought like some people get lucky, some people get to be happy, and I just get to be miserable, where everything happens to me and goes wrong,
Yeah.
And so that book put things into motion in my mind.
How wonderful.
And yeah, it really was. It was amazing. Like, just divine timing, like a gift from God, and so I had already kind of had that thought process going on when we had officially split up. Like I said, still, when it comes to changing your thoughts and your patterns, so it takes a lot of repetition and time. So it doesn't just happen overnight. So it's such a process for me over time. But I just kind of decided to really start going down that personal development, self-help direction at that time. So somehow I learned about like forgiving people, and that it's not about the fact that what they did is okay. It's just about like letting go. And so I had set the intention that like, I don't want to hold on to this pain. I don't want to harbor these negative feelings, because ultimately it's not doing me any good to be weighed down with all that baggage, like all that energetic baggage of the past. And so I actually forgave him long before he actually told me he was sorry, which he did do.
Okay.
He did tell me he was sorry. We had a beautiful conversation. It was actually, I don't remember which birthday of Luke's it was, but we were celebrating his birthday at the zoo. We did like this behind the scenes, feed the giraffes thing. And then we go back to my house and like have a pizza party for the kids and stuff.
Yeah.
And we just had a conversation. We were just, chatting. He wasn't with the woman anymore. He actually was with her for 4 years. So not only did he have this affair, he like tried to lie about it, but then they ended up moving in together and being together for 4 years. So I had to see her all the time.
Oh, geez.
It was, all the time. I had to interact with her, and I had to put on a smile and interact with her kindly, because I wasn't going to cause a scene in front of my son. And she's a part of his life, like it or not. And I will say, to her credit, she was always very good to Luke. And that mattered more to me than my own personal feelings.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so eventually the relationship did come to an end, and I had really gotten into a much better place by that point, and I had definitely let it go and forgiven him. So this is probably like 4 years it took to get to that place where he had I had forgiven before that point, but we had the full circle conversation somewhere around that time. Yeah. And he just apologized, for that. And, and I think the guilt had still weighed on him, which I told him I'd forgiven him a long time ago, and don't let the guilt get to you. It happened. Like for me, what helped me let it go was me understanding that, yes, he had the affair. Yes, society points the finger at him and says, oh, you were the wrong one. You did something so terrible. So me being in that position, I could have held on to that forever, me and my self-righteousness, and nobody would have told me I was wrong for that. Like,
exactly.
I could have been a victim forever and been like, I never can trust men again because I was cheated on. Like, I could have done that, and society would have said, you're so right,
Exactly.
But I chose to not do that. I chose to empower myself to make a different meaning out of that situation. And what I realized is what I started with, which is neither one of us really had healthy role models or examples of how to create a healthy relationship. And ultimately, when things aren't going well, we all have our own way of dealing with the situation. Right. His happened to be the affair. Right. But he wasn't happy. If he was happy, he wouldn't have felt like this woman spoke to him in a way that made him feel probably better. And, he's under a lot of pressure. He was deployed, away from his kid. So it wouldn't have been a thing if we had been in a great place anyway, which we weren't. And that was just his out. And I had my own issues I was dealing with too. I put so much pressure on him to make me happy. Yeah. I didn't understand I had to make me happy. I had to love myself. And so I wasn't the most pleasant person to be around either. So what I'm saying is, when you can see the way that you contributed to a situation, it makes it so much easier to let it go, because yes, right or wrong, obviously what he did was wrong, exactly. But it wasn't like I was some queen on my high horse, just perfect, doing everything right. It's a relationship. Two people contribute to it. So
exactly. No, I mean, what a healthy mindset. Wow, that's awesome. If I could just inject some of my clients with that, it would just be that would be so awesome. It's interesting. It's really interesting. And I'm guessing it wasn't just that book either, right? It's all of who you are. I mean, and it's kind of interesting, and in some ways too, though I've heard so many people say that, that they've wandered into a bookstore, as much as we kind of go, oh my gosh, the self-help books, ultimately there are some great authors out there, and there are some fantastic books. And if you are, I think, like you said, I can't really blame my parents or anything like that. Like, obviously your parents did like a pretty good job of you as well too, to just sort of like, you set your intention to like, I want to feel better. I want to be better. I want to feel better. And, this book kind of shows up in front of you. Right. And I think it's all of that. Your drive for self-improvement. And I love the what you said about I'm the driver of my own thoughts. Like, I have control of my own thoughts, and I don't want any of that negative, like, resentment, spite kind of energy inside me. Why would I want to carry that around with me? Let's look at, how can I be happier? How can I think differently in order to get, like I always say in my podcast, think differently in order to get different results. And you took that literally. So great. So what happens after that? Luke's growing up. Are you now a teacher, or what happens with your career?
Yes. So I was a teacher for 14 years. I started when I was, like 25, 26, when the whole separation divorce happened.
Okay.
And I was a classroom teacher for 9 years. And then I spent 4 years as a specialist for the Department of Special Education in my district. And then last year I quit to work for myself. So now I work for myself with my own company. So
okay, well, let's hear about that. Tell us.
Sure. About the company, or
yeah. I mean, okay, so how did you get from, I should say, being a full-time teacher to, I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. Obviously you were thinking for quite a long time. I guess you're not loving teaching as much. So
I love the kids. I did not like anything else.
I can see you being a great teacher, by the way. Like, I can just see it. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my God. I was a high school teacher. So I worked with teenagers, and I loved them. And I know a lot of people talk negatively about social media, but I'm in love with social media for the sole fact that I have so many of my former students that are my Facebook friends or follow me on Instagram, and I get to see what they're up to in their lives as adults now. That makes me happy. Or sometimes they'll comment on my post, or they'll send me messages and be like, and just say the sweetest things now, because they're adults themselves now. And it just makes me happy. And I just think about like teachers in the past before Facebook existed, and your kids, they just left you and they went out in the world, and then maybe you never heard from them again. True. And that makes my heart so sad. Like, I just couldn't imagine that, because all the kids that I ever taught, they're my kids, literally. I've always felt like they're my children. So the idea of like losing touch with all of them would just really suck. So I love social media for that. For that fact alone, to me, it's like so worth it, because I get to see babies and job success and graduating college and all this stuff. But so what happened was when I was teaching in the classroom, I noticed with high school students, so I was a nanny to young children. Like, that's where I started after graduating with my bachelor's degree. And so by the time I decided to go into teaching itself, I needed a break from young children. And that's how I ended up with high school. Yes. Because originally I thought I was going to be a kindergarten teacher. That was like my big dream, was to be a kindergarten teacher. Since I was a kid myself, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. But when I went in for the interviews, the pre-screening interviews, they're like, oh, I see you've marked on here high school as well. Because at that time I was like, well, maybe I'll just put it on there as an option. And I was like, yeah. So she gave me an elementary school and a high school to go interview at. I interviewed at the high school, and then 2 hours later, they called and offered me the job, and I took it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I just adored working with teenagers. And I always hear so many people talk like kind of down about teenagers, but their enthusiasm to me lights my soul on fire. The way they see the world and their big dreams, I just love it. But what I noticed when I was teaching is that navigating life is a challenge in high school because you think at that time that you're like an adult, even though we know that like
Yes.
you're definitely not. But they feel that way. And even though they're not needy, like young children are, like they don't need you to tie their shoes or change their diapers or any of that stuff. They're emotionally needy. Like that is a very big point in their lives where they need emotional support on how to navigate a lot of challenges from like my specialty was special education and I did co-teaching. So I co-taught in an English classroom with an English teacher, and we had like regular kids and we had special ed kids, like they're all mixed together. And so a lot of my students really grappled with self-esteem, confidence, and other issues like that because they had this academic career up to the point of being like 15, 16, 17, where they had struggled in school. And so they had a lot of failure under their belt. And here we are like having them to prepare to take a state mandated test. That was part of what I did with my 11th graders. And it's just like a lot of them had to overcome these mindset hurdles because they already in their minds thought that they were going to fail. And so I just learned that I love doing that way more than I cared about the actual teaching of like the content stuff, like the Shakespeare analysis and the persuasive writing. I do think it's important. So I'm not saying education is not important, but I found that I just loved that. I could have talked with them about that stuff like all day long, you know, like helping them learn how to like just believe in themselves and make good choices and then let them know that like high school is such a tiny little portion of your life. That's not even going to matter. Like all these things that feel so large right now, like they don't matter. And yes, there are kids that just excel academically speaking, and maybe your experiences are different, but outside of school, it doesn't matter how well you excelled in school. Like that doesn't mean you're going to excel in life, you know? So that's actually what got me into coaching.
I was going to say that explains it perfectly. Yeah. Like you're passionate about people believing in themselves and following their belief. Yeah. Okay. So this is a question. You have a 16-year-old. I have a 17-year-old son. So what do you tell your 16-year-old if he comes to you and says, you know, mom, you know, I love your passion, you know, the way you teach people to believe in themselves. So why am I doing why do I need to take, you know, stats and calculus, and can I just go start my own business? Because mom, I believe in myself. What would you tell him?
I would tell him to start his own business. Absolutely.
Well, and you'd be fine with him saying, I'm dropping out of school?
Well, as a high school kid, no, because by law, like legally, this is actually at the times where Luke is like, Mom, I'm so tired of school. Why do we even have to go? I'm like, the law says so.
Okay. I don't.
In general. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that's a law in Canada. Like they don't have to go to school.
You don't? It's a law here. Until 18, you have to go to school. It's compulsory. If you don't, there's truancy officers who will actually pursue the parent because it's the parent's responsibility for the kid to go to school.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that as a fact, but if like, I'll have to look into that. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, most of the time he's just venting, and I'm joking with him because he's going to. But
I know.
I'm like, well, honey, it is the law. Like you have to go to school. Like it's not an option.
And also, I was going to say, like, what is his dream right now?
You know, his dream is to just be happy, hang out in his room, and be cozy. Like he's very different than I am. Like where I'm like very fiery, he's like very like mellow, you know, and just a rock. He's like a rock, you know?
Yeah.
Very stable, grounded rock. But I actually have been encouraging him. It's so funny you mentioned this, to start his own business because he does these, I'll show you, these really great graphics. He learned how to do this in school, that panda.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm like, honey, you could create an Etsy account. You could have these as like downloads that people just buy and they download automatically. You could even do custom ones. And he's just like, I can do that. And I'm like, yeah. So I have been actually encouraging him to start a business and I would help him with it. Of course, he would continue to go to school, but just, I think that being an entrepreneur is an amazing opportunity. I think that there's so much freedom in it. And I think that like, if I had learned how to be a business owner when I was younger, oh my gosh, it would just soar. Like, it has been such a learning curve because I have a lot of skills. I don't have a lot of business skills.
Right.
Like, right. Other skills, but like being a business owner is a very different experience. So I've been trying to encourage him to do it, actually. So it's funny you said that.
Well, yeah, no, it's, I think it's a really, really relevant topic. I think, you're right. I mean, it's sort of like when you go into entrepreneurship, there's the actual business and then, your passion, but then it's everything behind the scenes that it takes to run that business. And I mean, yeah, we could have a whole another podcast on that, right? Like, I mean, you and I both know that. Well, we met through having the same mentor, a business mentor, and so we're learning all the ropes, and it is overwhelming. We were just having that discussion before I press record, how overwhelming it can be. So yeah, a lot to be said about that. But you had the courage to give up your your bi-weekly consistent check coming in, and that in fact is like hugely courageous, because you're also essentially kind of a single mom in some ways. But so tell us how difficult or easy was that?
It was really difficult. I had been thinking about doing it for a few years. Honestly, I had kind of grown tired of my job with the city, the stagnation of your pay as a teacher. It's pretty low, and you're not really in control of like doing any, like, private companies, you could go to your boss and maybe negotiate a salary raise. Like, with a job like a teacher, there's no negotiation of the salaries. It's really up to the school board and what they vote and decide on. So it's kind of out of your hands in that regard. So the idea of just like being in control of my own destiny in a sense, and like creating my own schedule and just doing things, it just sounded so appealing to me, but also, like you said, very scary. Being a single mom, taking care of my son, he lives with me. Like, I have to be able to feed him and keep a roof over his head. We can't be homeless, or, living out in my car. So it was scary, but I would say like the pandemic really just highlighted to me, like, we all went home, the teachers did, for like a year. We all had to work out of our home, and just working out of my home, not having the same interactions on a daily basis with different people, like being in that environment, was so soothing to my soul. And so then when we had to go back into the buildings and into our offices and just be around all of that again, it was just like, I had so much anxiety that I just didn't want to do it. And I thought, I believe that when there's something you desire to do, there's something on your soul, and you hear it and you ignore it, the cries will get louder until you finally listen. So
exactly,
the anxiety was setting in, the depression was setting in. And I was just like, I have to listen to myself and take this chance, in my case in particular, I have a teaching license, right? So I can quit my job and I can go back if I desired to, right? And actually, something beautiful that has been happening here in the States, at least, the whole like exodus of people quitting their jobs. There are jobs everywhere, and I'm not talking like dream jobs. I'm talking like waiting jobs and lower level jobs, right? Like, if you needed income,
right,
you could potentially go get a job waiting tables, or like, there's just so many options available that if you had to do it, I'm not saying you want to do it, but if you needed to, you could, right? Like, you could go find another job. So I just decided to take a chance and see what happened.
Wow. Okay. So any regrets so far?
Zero.
Great. Yeah.
No, I don't regret a thing. I'm not, like, the journey this past year has not been easy. The money has not been there. Like, I'm not balling out tons of money, like full
Right.
disclosure.
Yeah.
But even with that said, I wouldn't trade it for a day. Like there's just something so powerful about you being in control of what you're creating, you know,
Yeah.
and you being able to build this thing that you've been, you know, desiring and thinking about and picturing. It's amazing, you know.
So let's get into it then. What's your passion about your work? What can you bring to other women out there who want to change their lives?
So like you mentioned in the beginning, part of my passion is really working with other women who are in the process of going through a breakup or a divorce. They've already been through that process and now they're starting their life over, like essentially starting it over, like a new chapter. Or even I've worked with women who have not gone through the process of breaking up, but they've considered it. They want to do it. They're thinking about doing it, but they feel very uncertain. So I've kind of worked with all women in all those areas. And I just love being able to show women in a situation where there's so much uncertainty that if you decide that you're going to create something beautiful out of it, it is absolutely possible for you. And I do feel like I am the walking embodiment of that, since I have been through that. And I do have a life that I love. You know, I do enjoy being single. I do have a beautiful relationship with my ex-husband, which I think is so important when you have children. I have a great kid who's just floating through life, doing so well, you know, in school. Yeah. And I like to be able to give that knowledge and wisdom and guidance to other women who desire to have that, because I didn't have that. Like I said, I got lucky with the book. Yeah. And then I was like piecemealing things together on my own. And so to be able to take everything that I've gained over these years, my training, my knowledge, my experiences, and to be able to help guide other women through that process, it makes me feel so good. And it's funny because I didn't even like, that wasn't my desire to be a focus in my life for coaching. But women kept coming to me, like friends and coworkers, because they started to go through those same situations I had already been through. And so it was just kind of like guiding them through that. And then I thought, I won't do that. But then here came another woman. I'm like, okay, God, right. I will do it.
Exactly. And, you know, I think what you're teaching is through teaching through experience and through wisdom is the best type of teaching you can possibly do. Right. I mean, it's sort of like, hey, yeah, I've been there. Oh yeah. No, I know what you're talking about, you know, and for a woman to actually be, oh, you know, you felt like this too. Like, you know what it means to feel like this right now. And to be able to reach out to someone like yourself and kind of know that they're going to get that empathy and they're going to get that true like meaning, you know, of what they're going through is very, very powerful. I can only imagine for women. And like, tell me like something that resonated, you know, about you when I was first like reading your bio is sort of like it sounds like you love being single. And I mean, I love that, because I think a lot of the women that I have worked with, I mean, it terrifies them. The idea of even sitting, you know, in their apartment or their condo or their house by themselves. The idea of being by themselves terrifies them. So what can you offer them, you know, in that sense of how can I feel like better about that?
Yeah, I would say when I was younger, going through those same experiences, I also did not enjoy being alone. You know, I was scared of that. I thought that meant I was like going to be lonely forever. And the first time that my ex took my son for his weekend, I cried in the driveway as they backed away. Like, I still remember that because it was just so painful. I literally watched them drive away and I just cried because I did not know what to do with myself. You know, it was just like this thing that occupies all my time is my everything is now gone.
Yeah.
And so for women who are feeling afraid to be alone, number one, there's so much power when you can be with yourself. The fact that like when we can't be alone, it leads us to making choices that we may regret later because we're not coming from this place of groundedness within ourselves. And so learning how to be by yourself is so empowering and freeing because then you don't need anyone. You can desire people, you can want something, but you don't need it because you're already good with yourself. You're already fine being on your own. And I know I've seen too, like women who are afraid to like go out to eat by themselves or go to the movies or do these things alone. But I like to say that the way that we grow and become okay with things like that is through getting out of our comfort zone. It doesn't feel comfortable because I mean, the comfort zone is there for a reason. It's what we're used to. But when you push yourself out of your comfort zone and you do those things that feel a little scary to you, not only do you overcome it, but then you feel more confident within yourself. It builds confidence. That is like one of the fastest ways to feel more confident in yourself is to go do the thing that scares you. So just taking the time to take yourself out to dinner. Like, for example, if you don't want to sit at a table, you can sit at the bar. There's usually random people at the bar anyway. And I'll bring a book. I bring a journal. Whether I'm sitting at the bar or a table, I just like to do that. Sometimes I like to take myself out and journal while I'm having, you know, a meal with myself. But if you can do that, bring a book with you, bring a journal with you, go sit at the bar and have a meal, like just start small like that. You're going to actually find that you really enjoy yourself as company.
That's so nice because like, I think, you know, it's not that people mean to distract themselves from, you know, I guess finding out who they are. And I think this also speaks to, you know, what you mentioned. I don't know if we were talking before I pressed record or if it was after I pressed record, but, you know, you mentioned something like, I realized, you know, I don't even know who I am because, I mean, you met this guy when you were 16 and you're married when you're 19. You didn't really even know who you are, like by the time that you were divorced, you know, who am I and what do I want? And I think, you know, perhaps because of, you know, having a relationship from a young age and then, you know, all your focus goes on, like you say, taking care of your children or into the relationship when the children do leave, or you do have you know, you do find yourself separating from your husband and you all of a sudden you have this time alone. It's only then that you actually realize, you know, what do I really want? And now you, in a sense, like you've been given the gift of finding that out much earlier, you know, in your late 20s, perhaps. And you see that as a gift and you want to, you know, if I was just paraphrasing, want to, you know, give that gift to other women to help them see who they are and what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads to the other thing I did want to say that I was like, ooh, did I forget? But when you don't know who you are, it can feel very scary to then be alone with yourself. So start to think about what things do you enjoy? What things did you used to enjoy that you haven't been doing? So for me, I always enjoyed dancing. Cheerleading was always something I enjoyed so much. So when I was first working towards like rediscovering who I was, I got back into dancing again. And it just felt so amazing to be doing that. You know, there's this idea that once we reach a certain age, we're too old to do X, Y, and Z, but like, that's totally bullshit. Like, it doesn't matter your age. If you want to dance because you enjoy dancing, get back into dancing or take up something new. Maybe you always wanted to try something, but you haven't. And that could be the the thing you do that gets you out of your comfort zone, like gardening or taking cooking classes, or, you know, there's so many options. Maybe it's running. Maybe you used to enjoy running and you stopped, or maybe you want to start running. Like there's running clubs out there. And that's also a good way to meet other like-minded people when you get into different hobbies, and just try them on. Like maybe you think, well, I have no clue what I like. Well, just pick something and try it on. And then you can ask yourself, did I enjoy this or not? And then keep it or chuck it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Great. Well, okay. So, so how can women who are feeling like they're going through this right now, how do you work with women? Like, where can they find you, and what kind of services do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a private Facebook group for women called The Reclaimed Woman, and it's all about women claiming themselves. So that's where this came from. And it actually just came to me like one Saturday morning. I was sitting outside in my front yard drinking my coffee, and this vision of women claiming themselves is what came to me. And I was like, that's it. That's the vision. So that's my overarching umbrella. So I have a private Facebook group. And then I also have, I have a Facebook page with Instagram page with the same name, reclaim.woman.
Okay.
But I work with women currently one-to-one, so private coaching in a 6-month container. So if somebody would like to have that experience, I definitely have spots available right now. The reason why I do 6-month coaching is, or 6 months as the length, is that in my experience with working with other women, I find that by the 6-month mark, that's really when women are really feeling really good about themselves, the trajectory of where they're going. They're feeling very confident. They don't really need as much support anymore by that time. And they've really been able to kind of get their groove back, right? Get back into their groove, really feeling good about themselves. So I prefer to work with women in a longer term context, because I just know that support is really necessary to get there. Like when you're starting over and you're really unsure of like who you are and where you want to go, it's just a process and a journey that takes some time, some uncovering. And it's really good when you know you can have support for a good chunk of time to navigate that.
Well, yeah, no, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you've been through it. So it's not like you're just like, oh, 6 months sounds good.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I've been through it. I know that you're going to need support, every step of the way. Yeah.
To be honest, like it took me longer than 6 months, but I didn't have support, and what I've noticed with clients is 4 months they're doing really good. 6 months they're really soaring, by the 6-month mark. And so that's why I just really prefer, because when I first started my coaching business, I did experiment with different lengths of time, but I found like my clients just weren't ready at 4 months. They were doing good, but it was like still things to work through, heal, release, let go, shift, and all of that. But the good news, like what's beautiful about working with somebody that has experience, is you get to do things, you get to shift and heal and create this version of you in a much faster time period than if you were just navigating it on your own like I did. So
exactly. Exactly. It's like an acceleration. Yeah. So great. Well, thank you so much, Kristina. I think this has been very insightful and, just like a cheerful conversation. Usually when I speak about separation and divorce and building a new life, it's rather gloomy. But I mean, your story just shows that it doesn't have to be that way.
No,
you're going to help women.
It definitely doesn't. Yeah. And that's part of why I've just been really pushing my own self. When I talk about getting out of our comfort zones, that includes me. Like, I think putting yourself out there never feels comfortable in whatever context you can picture it. Right. So
exactly.
It's like spreading my message and showing another way means that I have to be visible and I have to be willing to put myself out there. And in the past that felt more scary. Like I feel so much better about it today, but that's because I made myself get out of my comfort zone and just go for it and do it. But I think it's so important for people to see that there is another way, that it doesn't have to look like two people fighting with each other, spending $30,000 on a divorce. Like it doesn't have to be that way. And if I can leave like one final message, I think the biggest gift that I got through my healing journey was I chose to focus on myself. I didn't try to change my ex-husband. I didn't try to change like my relationship with my father, because I didn't have a great relationship with him either. I didn't try to change anybody. The only person I changed was myself. And in changing myself, I actually changed those relationships. Like my father and my ex-husband are two of the men. Like I love them. I love them both. And I'm very close to both of them. If you would have said to me when I was like 20 years old, Kristina, or 25, the two men, like the two strongest supporters in your life are your father and your ex, I would have died laughing. I would not have believed you.
Right.
I would not have believed you.
No,
so
you're right. What a perfect way to end the episode. And you're so right. Like the more people that can believe that, the better I think our world is going to be and roll. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And it was great to see you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I really am so thankful to be here.
Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. And for everyone else, I'll see you next week. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.